Okay, welcome to Chapter 4. This is on post-installation tasks, page 77. So what are the objectives for this thing? Understanding devices and device drivers, understanding the registry and services, and understanding the initial configuration, which we kind of sort of did. Okay, so this first part is not very complicated. We're talking about devices and device drivers. How does the operating system actually even recognize physical things? How does it know you have a mouse or a keyboard? Or a webcam? How does it know that? Well, there's a part in the boot process where it pulls these things hunting for devices. And when it finds a device, it can't do anything with it without loading a device driver. So the device driver is like the bridge between the software running in your system and the hardware. So if you have a mouse, it has to have something that connects the two together. Okay, cool. Now, there's several ways to classify devices. This is kind of boring, but an internal device. Basically, we're talking about things that are inside the case, all right? Power supply, motherboard, CPU, memory. Do those things typically need an awful lot of care? No. There's no device driver for the power supply and the motherboard and the CPU and the memory. They don't really have device drivers because they're kind of fundamental to the operation of the machine. Whereas the BIOS itself figures out how much memory you have, not the operating system. The BIOS says, oh, I see what kind of CPU you have, not the operating system. So a lot of those decisions are made long before the OS boots. Then you have normal external devices, like keyboard, mouse, monitor, those kind of things. The USB interface was designed originally, to be completely plug and play. In other words, it has an enumeration service built into the device. So when you plug a mouse in, the mouse has just enough smarts to say what it is. Oh, I'm a mouse. Okay? And that's just enough as a little ID that the machine can go, hang on a second, let me look at my operating system list of devices. I see it on the list, so I'm going to load it. Or I don't see it on the list, I'm going to install a device driver. Now, if you're lucky, it'll install the correct device driver and you're okay. Mice and keyboard, you're practically guaranteed that any mouse, any keyboard, anywhere is going to be detected and have the correct device driver installed. But let's talk about peripheral devices. So we're talking about things in an external enclosure, like maybe a USB flash drive that you stick in, something like that, or a USB printer or a network printer, those kinds of things. Again, if it's USB, then the enumeration and exploration phase is relatively well thought out. But if you have an oddball thing, maybe you bought some goofy scanner or something, and it comes with a device driver, and you have no choice but to put the disk in and install the device driver that it wants. And then, of course, network devices. What if you have a network printer and a network attached storage or a sandbox, those kinds of things? Again, discovery over the network is slightly different. It works on the same principle, it just doesn't use the plug and play thing. It uses this network discovery thing. Okay, so don't get confused about, you have an all-in-one case, what's internal, what's external. Don't worry about that. The fact that you're monitoring your power supply and your CPU memory are all in the same box, I don't care. That doesn't even do to me. Another way to classify these things are by what, are the input or output. So, input device is fairly obvious. It's talking about, keyboard, mouse. Maybe you have an optical drive. That would be a good input device. An next would be a monitor, printer, those kind of things for output. These are not complicated terms. So one more time. Device driver is a program that basically translates between the operating system and the hardware. Okay? Plug and play can mostly do this on its own. Now, there is some places where people have tried to do super duper plug and play. And they have one called universal plug and play. And for example, in my modem and router combo, I can turn on and off a universal plug and play, which will allow me to take a device and plug it into, not to the computer, but plug it into a second device. I take a flash drive and plug it into my router, and it says, look, I'm not a full computer here, but I know enough about plug and play that I can handle this. And so it's same concept. It's just not being run on the machine on Windows, it's being run by probably, the back end is probably Linux, not that you could tell, on a separate device. Now, I typically turn that off because, quite frankly, I don't use that feature much, but that's not really the reason. The reason is for security, because do I trust my, modem slash, router device manufacturers to keep me up to date with all the latest and greatest security? I don't know. So I turn off the UPnP. Okay, so working with devices and device drivers, page 80. So let's go look at the device manager. Now, you could go, this used to be a little easier to do. You could do a right click here and, or you could go to the control panel, but the control panel is kind of getting out of favor. But I'm going to do that. I'm just for no particular reason. I'm just going to type control. Do I have that pinned? Yes, I do. Well, too bad. And then I'm going to go down here to a device manager. It gets you to the same place. Okay. All right. So here's what I have. So there are some different categories of things that you can see in here. Like, for example, I have a yellow triangle. So let's talk about this. So one of them is generic driver. So I'm just going to show you a generic driver. Like, okay, Microsoft AC adapter. That's it. I mean, it certainly did not come from, I have an uninterrupted power supply on my machine and it knows it. Okay, that's why it has this. So this is a generic driver. It's not from the company, right? And is that good? Yeah, that's probably good enough. There's no problem there. Missing is going to have either a yellow triangle like this, or a black exclamation mark saying either I see it, but I can't quite figure it out, or I see it and I have no idea what you're talking about. So those are the two things that pop up there. And the third one is a disabled. If you disable something, there's a little down arrow that pops up, down. Oh well. Anyway, a little disabled arrow that tells you that this thing has been disabled. So hey, let's go see if we can figure out why my TPM module didn't work for me. So I'm just going to go to properties, and it says protocol error was detected between driver and device, which basically means the device driver didn't work. Okay, that's basically what that means. So do I have, when I included my install, did I include the extensions for VirtualBox? Well, I certainly did. That should have brought that in there. It should have been, now that when this TPM module announces itself, it should have picked it up. Okay, I'm not exactly certain why it didn't, but I'm going to move on. Okay, so when it comes time for adding a device, like sometimes devices require human intervention, particularly like on a Bluetooth device. Yes, it detects it, but then you have to do something. You have to type in a code or something, pairing the device, right? So human intervention is required. Otherwise, it gets installed by PNP. Okay. And updating a device driver. So let's just go here. I can already tell you if I said update this, it's going to say, what? I don't have anything to update. But that's what's that. We're going to pretend. Okay. So I'm going to go here and say update device driver. Now there's two choices. One is automatically search. Now if you're connected to the internet, this is going to do practically nothing because you already are connected to the internet and the machine has already tried this and came up with a yellow. So, duh. It says, has determined the best driver is already installed. There may be better ones. So I'm thinking, okay. Maybe I'll do updated. Let's see if we can find something. No. Hey, while I'm here, might as well do that. Okay. So, the other one, the one that's a little bit more appropriate when you do update, is browse my computer. That's typically where you go to make a yellow go away. I have never been successful at making a yellow go away by clicking on the first box up here. Okay, just telling you. So if you want the yellow to go away, you're going to have to go download the software somewhere, probably from the vendor, and then mount it locally. Okay, so let's talk about making something go away. All right, so let's say I want to go here and I want to uninstall the device. Okay, I'm going to do that. You're about to uninstall this device. Uninstall? Sure, why not? Okay, now you think, okay, well, I'm done. I've solved the problem. The yellow triangle went away. The problem is disabling basically is temporary. The next time I boot this machine, it's going to come up and say, hey, I see a device, right? In fact, let's do this. Action. It says scan for hardware changes. See, that's what would have happened if I rebooted. It says, thank you for, uninstalling this thing, but as soon as plug and play hits, it's going to find it again anyway. So you didn't really do much. All you did was just, for that one session before you rebooted, it's no longer causing any issues. Okay. A more practical thing is on disable. Now, disable's different. When I go here and hit disable, that's going to stick. Okay, so when I boot it up a second time, it's going to come up with the black. It's not going to come up with yellow anymore, and it's never going to change unless you go in here and tweak it yourselves. Okay, if you have to roll back a device driver that has gone bad, okay, so there's a thing under, driver, and then there's we don't have one here, but pretend. And then this thing that says roll back, and that'll get you back to the previous one that hopefully was working. Like if you say, well, I think I'm going to update this guy, and then it turns out to be a total disaster, and you go, oh my God, just get me back where I was. Well, this is how you do it. You do a right click, properties, driver, and then roll back. Troubleshooting on page 86. So update driver, yeah, automatic or browse, that's how you do it. Roll back, switch to an older version to see if that worked. Disable, so it will not start a second time. Or uninstall, but that quite frankly is just temporary, right? That's how you do troubleshooting. Okay, on page 87 rather, they talk about getting to know plug and play and IRQs and DMAs and all sorts of other three-letter acronyms. So plug and play, PNP, really makes it simple. The operating system itself is going to go through the device enumeration phase, match it with known things that it knows about, and install a driver that it already has. That's just great. Now, how does Microsoft do this? Does Microsoft write all these drivers? I mean, every single one of them? No, not all of them. Particularly not video drivers and stuff. So what happens is that Microsoft goes to these vendors and say, look, if you want to sell a device and you want to claim that it's, Windows 10 or 11 compliant, then you're going to have this, and this. And we're going to require you to digitally sign your device driver. So it has to go through a very rigorous process. In Windows 95, you know what the number one reason for a Windows 95 crash? It was video graphics card drivers. It was not the operating system. And Microsoft got pissed and went, now doggone it, you're making us look bad. All right, so you're going to have to do better. And so they created this program that basically you enroll in this program as a vendor, and you have to go through these quality checks, and you have to do all this stuff, and you have to digitally sign things. Now, if you don't have a digital signature, Microsoft can digitally sign it on their behalf. So what's the whole thing about digitally signed? Well, quite frankly, modern versions of the operating system will not allow you to install a non-signed device driver. Device drivers are, even if it was a mouse driver, doesn't matter what it is, you are really, really close between the hardware and the software, right? You're kind of there in the middle, and so your ability to have fun and mess things up is pretty high. So they really, really want you to stay away from dodgy device drivers. First of all, they could cause the machine to crash, but it could cause the other damage. Okay, so let's talk about IRQ and DMA. So I'm going to pick a better device. I'm going to pick my display adapter. I'm going to do properties. And so it talks about resources. So but almost all device drivers are going to have three things. They're going to use a chunk of memory, they're going to use an interrupt, and they may use a DMA channel. And I'll explain what all those are in just a second, because we're coming up on the 15-minute mark.